Welcome to Uncover Your Story, the podcast that empowers you to find your brand story and share it with confidence to increase your impact in the world. I'm your host, Sarah Orton, and I'm a brand photographer, storyteller, and content creator. By drawing on my 20 years of experience and talking to amazing guests, we'll be uncovering the art of communicating through story. I'm here to help you build your storytelling toolkit with actionable tips, strategies, and insights. Let's dig in. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by Mo Kanjilal, co-creator of Edge of Difference, a dynamic consultancy that helps businesses rethink inclusion and create real lasting change. Mo is an employee engagement expert, a writer, a TEDx speaker, an award-winning entrepreneur, and a neurolinguistics programming practitioner. I attended a business event a year ago where Mo was talking about how to succeed in growing a service-based business while staying true to your core values. She was so warm, engaging, and insightful, and I immediately started following her on social. Mo is a passionate advocate for diversity, equity, and belonging, with a deep understanding of how much business and society can benefit when we make room for the individual voices and unique perspectives that make humanity so richly diverse. In this episode, we're going to explore how storytelling can be a powerful tool for inclusion and how business can create meaningful narratives that resonate with diverse audiences. Mo is a real powerhouse of a speaker, and I know we're in for a treat. So whether you're a business owner, creative, or change maker looking to amplify your message, this conversation is going to be packed with insights to help you connect with your audience, be more inclusive, and make an impact. Mo, welcome to Uncover Your Story.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Brilliant. So let's get cracking with the quickfire questions so we can get to know you a little more. Creative, changemaker, or big-hearted rebel, which do you most resonate with?
Big-hearted rebel.
That doesn't surprise me
Definitely.
somehow. What words do you choose to live by?
I love this question. Okay, so these are the words I wrote down. Bravery, honesty, and no bullshit.
Love it. If your life was a book, what would the title be?
Rebellious Differences.
Brilliant. And what song gets you on the dance floor?
Oh, I love this question as well. So I think the one that would instantly get me on the dance floor is Basement Jaxx, Do Your Thing.
Oh, that's a good one. And last one, what's a daily ritual or habit you can't live without?
Oh, this was brilliant because, I'm not somebody that, I don't know, does mindfulness or has great rituals. I couldn't think of a single thing that I thought people are going to go, oh, that's an interesting thing to share. So I thought I'd just share one that is for my sins, which is social media. Scrolling to social media, I don't think I go a day without doing that. Sorry.
Really? Oh, cool. So we can dig more into that now as we uncover your story. So can you share a pivotal moment in your journey that shaped your passion for diversity and equity and how that led to creating Watch This Space?
Yeah, this was a really interesting question because there's so many pivotal moments, if you like. So I'm going to share two that sort of tell the story of why I do what I do. So my early career was in technology companies. So I worked in sales and marketing in tech companies, and I was often the only woman in those teams, very often the only person of colour as well, because it was a very white male dominated environment in technology. It is changing, but that's what it was like. So I was always someone that was different to everyone else in the team. And in many ways that worked well for me because it meant people remembered me. So being remembered as a salesperson is a good thing. So in lots of ways it worked well, but it was a really tough world. It was hard work. I remember a particular moment where I had done really well and I'd got promoted. So I was now running the sales team. And a lot of people in the team were men who were older than me, who were white, who looked more like all of the leaders you saw in the companies that we dealt with. And I went to a meeting with a couple of people in my team. I'm their boss. I'm the senior person that's going to sign off a contract if we agree anything. And I walked into the room. The client we were going to meet went straight over to the person in my team, shook his hand, welcomed him, helped him to sit down, made him comfortable and everything. And I was kind of standing in the corner. And it was, he clearly just thought I was there to take notes or, kind of help things along. And that was one of many of those moments, but it's one where I thought, what do I have to do to get taken seriously? I've just won the Salesperson of the Year award, and I've sold the highest value contract in the company's history, and I'm the boss, and this is how I'm being treated. That was one pivotal moment. But then those are the things that drove me to work on diversity, equity, inclusion, because people shouldn't have those experiences. You should be able to pursue the career you want to and be treated seriously. And, that should be the way, but it's not. So I then got involved in working on bringing different people into the organisation. So I would recruit different people to my team. I got involved in the graduate scheme, the apprentice scheme, really thought about how we can bring different people into the organisation. There was a young woman who joined the apprentice scheme. I thought, great, this is going to be really good. I love to see this. She's going to have be able to really progress her career. And she left after about a month. And the reason was that she had really bad experiences in all the meetings she was in and how she was treated. And she just thought, I'm out of here. It was so sad. And it really taught me that I could do whatever I wanted. It wasn't until the whole organisation felt like anybody could have a career here that things would change. It wasn't just about me. It was about everyone in the organisation. It was about all the leaders. It was about all the people that had treated her badly. So it isn't something that you can solve on your own. You have to work and engage the whole organisation. And I think those two examples tell the story of why I do what I do.
Can you give any examples of how it was she was treated? And like, is it the sort of thing that, and I'm assuming this is that she was the way she's being treated by men? And if so, do you think, were you able to pick that up with the men? And what was it the sort of things that were like so shocking that they should have known? Or is it kind of like things they should know, but like they're just not getting it?
So I did used to pick people up on it, and I made it my kind of mission to do that. And I learned different ways of doing that. So people don't like being told in the moment. They don't really like that because it's their ego. You can talk to people separately. They don't really like that either. I was often labelled as difficult, aggressive, bossy, because I was saying things they didn't like. Even if I said things to try and sort of say things with authority that another man would have said, they didn't like that either. So, it was hard. So I've learned over the years how you have those kinds of conversations with people. And it's not by getting angry. It's not by doing things in the moment. You have to really think about that. You do have to pull people up on their behaviour. They don't like that.
Yeah.
There are examples where people think I'm in the wrong because I'm being too sensitive. They don't like it. But the reason I do it is I do it with the risk that people won't like me.
Yeah.
And that is the risk I run. But I'm not going to put the whole reason that I do what I do is that it shouldn't be that way. And if I don't fight these fights, then I have to do that.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So it's changing the narratives of the way we do things, isn't it? And the stories we tell in organizations. So can you tell us more about why is diverse representation in the stories that organizations tell so important? And how can businesses authentically use principles of diversity and inclusion in their brand storytelling to connect more deeply with diverse people?
So the storytelling, so there's different ways that you can communicate about this. One powerful way is through research and statistics that you can really show people why diverse organisations matter. Why does it matter? So you can tell people, so in our book, actually, we've got lots of examples of research and statistics that tell people why it matters. Examples are you get 19% more innovation with diverse teams. People are something like 50% more likely to stay in an organisation if they feel they belong. Those are the kinds of things that you can tell people in a most powerful way through a story.
Yeah.
And so the way to do that is there's lots of different, this is what we work with our clients on, is how they can bring out those stories. So there's some really great stories that we've come across in the time we've been running the business where people have really uncovered something interesting. So the story I'm going to tell you is actually about what you can do about bringing different people into your organisation, because a lot of people ask us this. That's the thing I get asked the most. What can we do? What's the one thing we can do? And there's not one thing at all. So this may not be so much the organisation kind of a brand story, but I'll tell you this example. And it is that it was an organisation we're working with where what they address, they're a not-for-profit that address young people experiencing difficulties. And those young people are very diverse, very different. But the board were not. And so they were really struggling to bring different people into their leadership teams and board, didn't know what to do. They had a few options about how they could have addressed that, lots of different things they could do. And we said to them, why don't you try something quite bold? And they were like, what's that? And we said, why don't you show some pictures of the people that you represent, that you're working for, a picture of the board and say, can you see the problem here? Do you want to help us? And that had a really big and different response. And they got very different people in them because they were open. They weren't trying to pretend they were something they were not. They were saying, we know we've got a problem. Look, we're telling you this is the issue, but we can't solve this on our own. Do you want to help us? And I think those kinds of things can really bring those stories out. And I think those organisations that do that are the ones that are driving for change, the ones that really say, you know, we need help here. They're not saying we've got it fixed. You know, or they're not also not saying we don't need to do anything. They're saying we do.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. And it's just, like you say, just being really transparent and open about it, because I know that the last thing someone wants to feel like is that they're a token minority on a board or whatever, but you're not, you know, by doing it like that, you're just being really like honest and saying, look, we need to change this. And yeah, brilliant.
Yeah.
So the other day I opened up your LinkedIn newsletter and I just thought it was such a brilliant example of an organisation that has done the work on its branding. So you are like crystal clear on your values, your mission, your audience, your visual identity, and you've developed a really strong tone of voice. So all of which comes together really well when you write, and you write in such a super engaging way. So I want to read out the beginning of that letter because I just think it'll be so useful for her listeners to hear it. Empire is striking back. Donald Trump and Elon Musk have declared war on diversity and inclusion. Alan Sugar and Stuart Rose are raging against remote work. The use of inclusive language in job ads has declined by nearly 20%, and the UK has gone backwards with regards to gender equality, sinking to its lowest global ranking in a decade. The establishment has rallied and set about defending the old model. They want to reinstate outdated working practices that treat humans as resources to be sucked dry and make certain people feel more powerful by demeaning others. We say no. If you're cool with the old ways of working, then crack on. But if you want to be a different type of leader, if you want to treat your team with respect, if you want to create an environment where everyone can thrive, if you believe that purpose and values are the keys to profit, then join the Workplace Rebellion. We are the Rebel Alliance. I just love this. I think it's brilliant. And the newsletter goes on, and you know, you've got a great video to go with it, and you share some really sobering insights in the newsletter. And I then went on to check out your workplace manifesto on your website, which is also brilliant, and which I'd encourage everyone to go and take a look at. So yeah, I just wanted to ask you to share a bit about how you came up with this concept, about the Workplace Rebellion, you know, the weekly dispatches of Rebel Reports. What do you want to achieve?
So first of all, I have to credit who wrote all of that. That is Allegra Chapman, my business partner. She writes the newsletter. She writes the LinkedIn newsletter and our email newsletter. And it's brilliant. I also read it. It was like, wow, this is what we're talking about. It's brilliant. So where it came from is when we first started, we started the business in lockdown. So we're 5 years old. And it was at the time of the pandemic lockdown when you couldn't leave the house for more than an hour a day. We could just see inequalities all around everything that was happening. So at the time, you know, childcare was forgotten about. What if you didn't live in a house where you could work? What if you didn't have a garden? The inequalities were kind of all around us. Bosses that said you couldn't work remotely made it work overnight. You know, we could see it was the time to do something about it. And so we had that kind of rebellious tone of voice in those days. And then as time went on, we worked with different clients. We toned things down. We kind of, you know, progressed in a different way because we became a more serious business. We had clients and we had, you know, things to do. And then what happened is sort of towards the end of last year, but definitely beginning of this year, we saw what was going on with the language around diversity and inclusion, the work around it, and we could see like what was going on. And I read a book, which I really recommend, which is called How to Start a Cult by Jodie Rainsford. It's a really good book. As I was reading it, I said to her, like, you've got to read this book. You've got to read it. I really, really need you to read it. I thought her and Kaya, who I work with, probably thought I'd gone slightly weird. She's talking about reading this book about a cult. And I was reading it on the train on the way to an event in London. And I didn't realise they were going to have security on the door. And they opened my bag to search it. And I had to say to them, no, this is a marketing book. It's okay. And so that's what led us to launching this workplace rebellion, because we were like, there are a lot of people that think this is nonsense and think it's a waste of time, and all that. They're people that don't understand it largely, or they're scared, or they think something's going to be taken away from them. And actually, they're not the people we're speaking to. We're actually speaking to people that want to do something about it and want to feel like they're not alone.
Yeah.
And so that's where it came from. We were like, it's time to go for it. Let's launch with the rebellion. And we're really going for it now. And it's much more us, and we love it. And we keep coming up with ideas because it's actually about what we're about and where we started. So much more tells the story of what we want to do.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And that's really, I think, useful for listeners to understand, like, the more you understand who you are and what you're about, the more the voice flows and it becomes more natural, doesn't it, your storytelling?
Yeah, it's been a real lesson for us in staying true to what you really believe. Yeah.
So from your experience, what are some common challenges that businesses face when shifting towards more inclusive narratives, and how can they effectively address resistance both internally and externally?
Yeah, so some of the things I've touched on already. So first of all, when we're working with an organisation, we need to see that the leadership team or the leader, that they're on board with this, that they want to do this, because otherwise it will never happen. If you don't have the backed by the organisation, there's no way, because you have to take people with you on a journey. It's why we called our book The Inclusion Journey. It has to be like a whole journey of change. That's the first thing. And then in terms of resistance, that often comes from a place of fear, that people don't understand what's happening, why it matters. If you're somebody that's never experienced feeling like you're the only person like you in a room, or discrimination or bullying, like you've never faced those things, it's very hard to understand why it matters, because you've got no idea. And so it has to be a process of engaging with people and addressing some of those fears. So what we do is we call it our discovery process. And that process is actually about a lot of listening. So we do things like discovery workshops where we'll ask people questions like, what kind of organisation do you want to work for? There's a moment where we say, like, what language and terminology don't you get? Which acronyms don't you understand? And there's usually a sigh of relief. That will often uncover those people that are scared. So sometimes I can usually spot them when you go into the room, arms folded. Well, the thing is, you can't say anything anymore. And I'll often say, what is it you want to say? And then we can uncover that. There's ways of dealing with it. So when people do say things that might be hurtful or discriminatory, we have techniques of saying things like, oh, that hurt. Like, what do you mean by that? And kind of try and get to what people are scared of and what people really are thinking about. So that's kind of one way that we engage. We also do a lot of asking of questions. So we do it through surveys, we do it through workshops. And then we'll also show people why it matters through the research and statistics. Like, why is this important to your organisation? Why does it matter? And you can't give all organisations the same information. It has to be like, understand what they do, what's relevant to them, how can you really help them with it, and show them that this is so much more than filling in some forms. It's about the whole ethos of the organisation.
Yeah, brilliant. And I think especially in the work that you do, like the stats and the research is really important, but it's great the way you integrate it into your storytelling, and that's the way it can really get through to people, isn't it? And really help them understand it so much more. So Edge of Difference offers guidance on implementing and measuring diversity and inclusion strategies. What metrics or indicators should organisations monitor to assess the effectiveness of their inclusive storytelling efforts?
So there's no one metric, so it will depend on the organisation. So I'll give you some examples. So it could be that an organisation is struggling with recruitment and retention of people, and it might be that will help them with how to really track what they're doing and really kind of work on the things that they need to work on. It could be that they're struggling to communicate with a wide audience. That could be the thing that they're really saying, like, we're not reaching the people we want to. So it could be that we need to uncover some data around that. So it's about trying to think of those things. It could be the kinds of things we also hear is that we're struggling with new ideas and innovation. We work with tech companies where they might say that that's what it is. And you can then tell them the stories and the research about how they can really drive change through that. So I'll give you an example. We're working with a technology company where they make medical devices that could be used by anybody in it to test some of your things like your blood sugar levels and things like that. That's relevant to everybody. This could be anybody that needs to use that technology. So if they only have some types of people in the roles that are creating the product, creating the way it works, creating how you communicate it, if they're only having some types of people, then for a start, the product's only going to be developed to work for some types of people. So they're going to miss the whole rest of the people that they need to reach with the product. When they're communicating it, they're going to miss reaching the people that they want to reach with the communication. So you need the people that say, have you thought about that? Why aren't we doing that? Why don't we tell it like this? Why don't we do it like that? That's a hard thing to do. So if I've been that person where you're the one person who has a different idea to everyone else, and it takes them courage to say, I don't agree, I've got a different opinion. So that's the other thing, is that organisations need to create the environment where people can say they don't agree, and it's okay to do that.
Yes, and creating safe spaces. So you are an author, a TEDx speaker, a mentor. You have a background in employee engagement and inclusion. How have your personal experiences shaped your approach to storytelling in business, and what key lessons have you learned about its power to drive meaningful change?
So I did a degree in English, but then I went into sales and marketing in tech companies, which might seem like a strange thing to do because I didn't study technology. What I learned through studying and then working in tech is that complicated technology is something you have to understand and then be able to explain it to people really clearly. That's what you have to do to be able to sell effectively. So actually I learned about storytelling all the time in my business. So an example is I used to sell some technology that goes in radiotherapy machines. So it's for treating cancer. So a really effective way of communicating about that would be, I would say to people, just close their eyes and I'd say, raise your hand if you or someone you know has been affected by cancer. Like the whole room would raise their hand. Then I'd say, open your eyes and look around you. And that would be a way to tell people like why this matters, why it's important. That's it's been part of my career the whole time I've worked. So then translating that into what I do now, I think when we do our training, when I do a talk, in my TEDx talk, it's all about weaving in stories, because that is how you tell people what you're talking about, what you're doing. And so that's how you do it. So it's actually been very central to everything I do and to driving meaningful change. So I don't know if you watch my TEDx talks. If not, I'll send it to you.
I have, yes. So that's all about storytelling. Brilliant.
So the story about Mahatma Gandhi, the quote, that was from a meeting I went to in West Sussex a few summers ago. And that was the story. And to start with, I was like, how do I weave this story in? And the curator, he worked with me, he said, like, have you got an actual story about that? And I was like, yeah, actually, I have.
Yeah, do you want to just share that now?
Yeah,
then,
I'll tell it, so that people can hear. So you also see quotes from Mahatma Gandhi. He's very quoted, like, everywhere. I went to this kind of stately home, very grand building in West Sussex for a business meeting. And as I walked up the stairs, there was lots of quotes on the wall, and they were there to inspire people. And the one from Mahatma Gandhi said, easy to stand in a crowd, but it takes courage to stand alone. And that, it's a fantastic quote. But I sort of looked around and it kind of felt weird. And I thought it troubled me. It felt strange. And then I went home and thought about it. And I thought, well, that is a great quote. But I've just been to a house. And who was he speaking to when he said those words? Well, he was speaking to the people of India, because he led the work to rebel against the British Empire and get the British out, the Quit India campaign that my grandparents were actually involved in. So he led that. So he was speaking to the people of India to tell them to stand up against the British. And then now, in a British stately home, probably owned by people who benefited from the wealth of India, probably drained India of its wealth, and now putting this quote on the wall to inspire people without understanding the context and history. Yeah. That's why I told that story. And I see his quotes on websites and all over the place. And I think people really understood what he meant when he said words like that.
That's a good example. So Edge of Difference helps businesses rethink inclusion and create real change. Can you share a success story of an organisation or individual that transformed their approach through your work? And what role storytelling might have played in that?
Oh, lots. Yeah, lots, actually. Lots in our book. I'm going to tell you one that's actually in the book.
Yeah,
Because
great.
it's a really interesting one and quite a different example. So we worked with Richmond Hill Hotel, which is a very fancy hotel in Richmond, very nice place.
Yep.
And when we started working with them, what they wanted to work on was the fact that in senior leadership roles, it was not very diverse, but their front of house teams, it is. So bar staff, people working in the restaurants, it is. But they had this discrepancy, but those people were not progressing to senior roles. And they also had the problem of a lot of those people in the kind of sort of entry level roles leaving all the time. They just weren't staying. And it was a real problem for them. It was costing them money, constantly having to recruit. It's a common problem in the hospitality industry. So we worked with them for quite a long time on a whole process of inclusion journey mapping, listening to their people, really getting into what was going on in the organisation. We did training with all of their employees. We met all of them. It was brilliant. We got leaders going into sessions with people in the more entry level roles. So they got to hear from people and they got to say what was frustrating them, where they felt they weren't being listened to. Really, really got into it. I'm not going to be able to remember the exact stat, but I'll try. They used to have something like a retention rate of around 50%. I think it was more like 48, 50%, something like that. And then through working with us, that went up very quickly over the time we were working with them to 76%.
Amazing.
So it went up and it's been increasing ever since. And it's really changed how people feel when they work for them.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Well done. So actually, my next question was going to be about the fact that people can find out more about your work on your website, but also that you've got this book, the Inclusion Journey. So is there anything else that you wanted to just share with readers about what people can expect from this book?
So the whole book has a travel theme and it's about, why do you need to go on the journey? What do you do about the people in the back seat who are complaining? Are we there yet? What do you need to take with you? So it got that theme going all the way through it. It's packed full of research and stories, loads of research from all different sources. And we interviewed some brilliant people whose stories are told in the book. So a whole range of organisations. I'll tell you about one of them because it's quite a local one. So we did talk to some big companies and, the NHS and things like that. But one of my favourite stories in it is Lewis Football Club.
Oh, cool.
Don't know about them. They were the first football club to pay the men and women's team equally.
Amazing.
And then
I didn't know that.
Hashtag Equality SD, absolutely brilliant football club.
Yeah.
They don't have a lot of money. They're an example of what you can do without funds.
Yeah.
So they basically made a stand. They said, we are going to pay the men and women's team equally. Why should it be different? Equality SD. And then since then, they run some amazing campaigns. So they have a campaign for the men's team, which is Call Him Out, which is if they hear any kind of sexist language anywhere at all, they'll call it out. And so they are a real example of people that are driving change with limited budget. They believe in it and they're doing something about it.
I love that. That is so cool. So if you could give yourself, your younger self, one piece of advice, what would it be?
I love this one because I mentor for the Girls Network charity. So I mentor girls aged 14 to 19 and I often tell them this because they go through really hard times with a lot of bullying. It's really hard. And I always say to them, don't listen to the haters. They're not going to matter in the story of your life. So don't worry about it. Yes, there are people that will say these things. There are people that do these things. But in the grand scheme of someone were to write a book about your life when you're older, they won't matter. Insignificant. Move on. Yeah.
Brilliant. And finally, what's a short story from your work that brings you joy?
Short story from my work that brings me joy. There's so many of them.
Yeah.
But I find it really difficult. So I'm going to tell you one, which is actually about someone in our team. So in 2022, Allegra, my business partner, and I went to see TEDx Brighton at Brighton Dome. We watched a whole range of speakers and it was an amazing, inspiring day. And one of the speakers who spoke was a young woman called Kaya Allen Bevan. And she was the organizer of the big Brighton Black Lives Matter protest in 2020 when she was at school, the one that had thousands of people. She organized that. So she had a really inspiring talk at TEDx Brighton about that. Allegra and I watched that and we were like, wow, she's amazing. She's absolutely amazing. And we were going to run an online event in a few weeks after that. And we were like, I wonder if she would speak at our event. And then we were a bit like, do we dare message her though? Oh, I don't know. It's a bit scary. Do we dare message her? So we messaged her on Instagram And she immediately messaged back and was like, yes, I'd love to. And that's how we met her. She then became a freelance trainer. And then 2 years ago, she became our employee. And so that
Amazing.
is how we met her. And actually this year at TEDx Brighton, she's leading our whole section on the youth voice and young speakers.
Amazing. That is so cool.
Yeah, definitely. She's brilliant.
Oh, thank you, Mo. That has been an absolute pleasure talking to you. I have loved this. There's so much useful stuff to take away. I'm going to love thinking about this episode and getting my little takeaways together to share with everyone. But thank you so much for sharing all your wisdom with us.
Thank you so much for having me on. I've loved it.
Oh, brilliant. What a conversation. I just love how Mo speaks with such clarity, conviction, and such a beautiful energy. She reminds us that storytelling at its core is about human connection and can be an incredible tool for brave leadership and creating inclusive environments and societies. Okay, so here are 3 takeaways to sit with. Number 1, inclusion isn't just a policy, it's the story your workplace tells every day. Who gets heard, who feels seen, and who feels they belong? That culture-wide narrative has to shift if we want real change. Number 2, data might convince the head, but it's stories that move the heart. Whether it's a bold visual showing who's on your board versus who you serve, or a personal story that shines a light on bias, stories are what connect us and inspire action. Number 3, when you truly know your values, your brand voice can be bolder, braver, and far more human. Mo's Workplace Rebellion campaign is a great example of how clear values give you permission to tell stories that cut through and call people in. So maybe grab a notebook or open your notes app and ask yourself, what story is your business telling? Whose voices are missing? And how can you bring those voices forward in ways that create belonging? If you're new here, just a reminder that I'm Sarah Alton, brand photographer, storyteller, and content creator. I work with creatives and changemakers to help you tell soulful brand stories that connect and inspire. Head to sarahorton.co.uk to learn more about my services or to book a mentoring session. Thank you so much for listening to Uncover Your Story. If this episode resonated with you, hit follow, share it with a friend, and leave a review, please. It really helps more people find the show and share their own stories too. Until next time, uncover your story, own it, share it, and shine.